Alrighty, y'all. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of learning about classic, iconic, and quite frankly, fascinating cars that have come especially from European countries. Aren't common here in the US, or just cars that I have not really learned about. And this might be one of the coolest episodes ever because we're talking about the Mercedes-Benz 300SL Gullwing. Now, I hope to learn a lot about this car today because I don't know the ins and outs of this thing or a lot of the details. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't know of this car. This has to be one of the most famous cars in history. I think any car guy from any country on any continent has an idea about this car. They've seen it somewhere. Maybe they've heard about it. They've seen it in a video game. They've seen it in a movie. Something, right? And that's the case for me. I've definitely seen this car, and it's arguably one of the most beautiful machines ever in existence. We're going to take a look and kind of just admire this thing today. And for me, I'm going to learn more about it because even though I know of the car, I don't really know anything about how it came to be, its history, the drivetrain, any interesting features with it. All I know is it looks absolutely gorgeous and kind of shows how very fascinating Mercedes-Benz is, right? It's a company that's made, literally, it seems like a million different vehicles. They make so many different vehicles across so many different decades. And there's a lot of iconic cars from that company. It's a very powerful company when it comes to cars, right? If you want to talk about history. They started it all. Everything we look at here in this video will be linked in the description down below, so you can check out way more from these videos and of course, browser channels. I'll be looking at some websites as well. So first up, we're going to look at some sounds and just kind of quick accelerations in this thing. Remember, I've been told by multiple people over the last year or two to look at this car. So I do thank you guys always for suggestions. I'm just going to start with this one right here. Here we go. So we're in the car for this one. Hold up. Damn. This is a really old video, you can tell, but this is a 59 Mercedes 300 SL. Not quite 0 to 100 miles per hour. I believe this is a miles per hour gauge because this looks like the US. Although it could be kilometers per hour, I'm not sure. Either way, this thing, you can kind of tell, this accelerates a little bit faster than I would have imagined. I mean, we're talking about the 50s here, right? Holy smokes. I've seen some people mention that you could argue that this was, maybe the first supercar or just really, really top dog sports car. I don't know how you would want to qualify it, but we're talking about the 50s here, and this thing looked exotic and it was very fast for the time. I feel like for a 50s car, they're fun to drive and they're beautiful, right? From a lot of different companies. Even the American cars were just gorgeous in the 50s, but I don't think a lot of them were that fast, right? I don't think of them as being super fast cars. That looked fast for the 50s. Also, look at the interior on this thing, and can we talk about the obvious, my favorite thing with cars, like a lot of car guys? The sound. Props to this guy for actually driving this thing, right? And revving it up. This thing sounds incredible. It sounds exotic, and it's a 50s Mercedes. Like, that's crazy to me. This must have just blown people away at the time.
Gefahren habe den überführt, also ich kann euch sagen, nach diesen 7 Stunden war ich wirklich fertig.
Here we go. Oh.
Ja, angefangen hat die Geschichte mit dem
what a beautiful machine.
45 und wie die Autos vor dem Krieg ausgesehen haben.
I mean, this thing is just gorgeous. Look at that.
Das war schon ein Meilenstein. Also es ist ein absoluter Supersportwagen.
That is literally a piece of artwork.
Der donnert
Damn.
richtig los. Tolles Auto, ja.
Wow. The Gullwing doors. Gullwing doors, that insane sound, this amazing design. We're going to learn about this thing in just a second. This had to have had some sort of racing pedigree, right? They had to have raced these. There's no way this was a street car that was this exotic and not made also famous on the racetrack to some degree, right?
Ja, so nachdem wir jetzt hier mal ein paar Meter Gas gegeben haben, der Mercedes war ja hier gerade beim Classic Center.
And look at, like, and by the way, this is not a knock on the car. This thing looks like it would be difficult to get in the first time, right? Just because, like, you have this huge, look at the opening, it's so different than normal cars. You have to step over this huge gap right here, right? Due to the construction of the car. It's very odd. And I don't mean that in a bad way. It's just different than a lot of cars, especially modern cars, right? Like the way this looks and the way it's constructed, it would just be so weird to get in over this thing. You also got to, kind of squeeze in a relatively small opening. But you have that exotic Gullwing doors on a 50s car. It's like so crazy to me, right? Of course, that was not common. This had to be the first car that had that, right? There was no way any cars in 1956 were running around with Gullwing doors. This had to be the only one, I imagine. And probably the first. But yeah, you get in there, but once you're in there, I'm sure it feels great. I love the plaid seats. Maybe plaid's the wrong word, but you see that pattern on the seats over there? Very cool. That must be like a German thing, because I feel like modern day Volkswagens, right? I've seen like GTIs here, even in the US, that have these seats kind of like that pattern still, and like a 2019 GTI or something, like a modern day car. I think that's very cool. But yeah, this thing is just crazy.
Und da sind
the way it
technische
looks.
Dinge für 30.000 € gemacht worden. Er ist gecheckt worden und das merkt man. Der bremst wirklich gut, so als ob er Scheibenbremsen hat. Die Maschine hört sich ganz toll an.
Yeah, it sounds so good.
Schaltet gut, kuppelt gut. Also mir fällt im Moment nichts auf, wo ich sagen könnte, das passt nicht ganz. Das ist ein gutes Auto. Kult. Also hier oben ist der Griff zum Zumachen. Das ist nicht so, die Tür so zumachen. Man muss das immer so
reach
machen.
Up, grab that
Das sind
door.
die beiden Flügel.
Wow.
Und wenn man dann drin sitzt, dann hat man das Gefühl, man
Old
sitzt
cars,
wie in
of
so einem
course, had that
Flugzeug
quarter
hier.
window you could
Also
open.
ist eine ganz, ganz tolle Anmutung. Und wie er fährt, das ist ein absoluter Supersportwagen. Wenn man vorne so rüber guckt, da sieht man die beiden Höcker.
So interesting, the mirror is down here instead of up, on the windshield. Very
Auf der Haube.
different.
Jetzt ist leider Verkehr bis zum geht nicht mehr. Und zwar die beiden Höcker kommen daher, weil die Maschine, die ist leicht schief eingebaut. Und die
my God, that thing
Einspritzpumpe,
is
die hätte sonst vorne aus der
gorgeous.
Haube rausgeguckt. Also hat man diese beiden Höcker vorne auf die Haube machen müssen, damit er bemoost.
Is there a more photogenic car? There is a lot of beautiful cars out there, don't get me wrong, right? From any era, from any country, any era, any manufacturer. Is there really, though, a more iconic, photogenic car that has a presence, right? There's like an unspoken pedigree a car can have that you can't really define by words, but the car just commands your attention, right? And it draws you in, and you're like, wow. There could be 50 cars in the background, and I can't see any of them because this is in the way. As in, it just commands that presence, right? It has an it factor that you can't really define. This car has that.
Und das wird ja bis heute
Look at
von
that
der
view
Firma
over the hood.
AMG
Love
von
it.
Mercedes genutzt als Designmerkmal, obwohl es heute gar nicht mehr nötig wäre.
This is such a vibe, driving that car on this beautiful road, by the way, with no potholes. I love it. On this beautiful road in definitely what looks to be Germany, this countryside here.
Aber damals bei der Konstruktion musste das so
I wish I
gebaut
was in
werden.
that car right now. This
Ja, wie
looks so
gesagt,
fun.
ab 1992,
That is a
ab
vibe right
1952
there.
sind die Rennwagen gebaut worden, womit man auch Millenium hat
Dang.
gewonnen. Und Speck wieder gefragt nach dem Zweiten Weltkrieg. Und
It's kind of weird. This is a car that looks compact, but then when you see it parked there and him standing here, it actually is like, especially like this rear overhang behind the rear tire, it actually looks like it's quite long, right? It's very unique. I think you all know that, but it is extremely unique, this vehicle. The rear especially, right? It's a lot more round than I thought. It swoops so far down. I also didn't notice that it has, are these like vents on the roof?
da passte dann nicht jeder dahinter, deswegen diese Klappvorrichtung. Ja, der Tank von dem 300 SL, der ist hier. Nein, ich möchte noch mal was anderes zeigen, was ich ganz wichtig finde. Was ich nämlich absolut irre finde, der hat Sidepipes und dadurch einen irren Sound. Schaut euch das mal an. Das ist jetzt vielleicht nicht original da unten. Das sind die
That is so freaking cool. Yeah, I didn't realize that this is kind of like a meme in the car guy community now, is that, you know, you see a lot of cheap cars with fake vents on the side like this. You know, you could get them at like an auto parts store, right? And glue them on your clapped out Buick or your old Dodge or whatever, right? Or you see a Honda Civic with these glued all over, right? It's pretty ridiculous, of course, right? But it's transitioned to, you see a lot of actual, you know, cars from the factory in modern day that have fake vents, even on some performance cars. I think that's pretty funny. Now, of course, back then with this car, it's real, right? This actually had real vents. And to think that it had these side vents in the 50s, again, seems like ahead of its time. You know, it looked sharp, and it looks even better because you know that it's real, right?
Chevrolet definitely took note for the next decade. All right, let's hop in this thing. As you grab for the door handle, you start to see the aircraft influence that Rudolph brought to this thing. As you get inside the car, it becomes apparent.
Whoa, it had one of those? I thought that was a new kind of door handle. Like you see on Teslas and stuff, like where it's like flush with the body, and then you kind of got to like hit the side of it and it pops out so you can grab it and open it. I thought that was a new feature. I didn't know that this had this in the 50s. What? I never noticed that. How did I not notice that? Wow.
And you just see this giant sill. That's because of the tubular race car chassis that's underneath this thing.
Wow.
It really does feel like a race car as you go to step in. But it's a little bit daunting for guys who aren't race car drivers. So they wanted to help everyone out with the tilt steering wheel. Check this out.
What?
In this car, although it looks like I'm going for a pick.
What? That is so cool. That was my first thought that I should have voiced a second ago when I was talking about how hard this would be to get in. I thought that wheel's going to be in the way, you know, that sill, right? This huge barrier of entry. Between that and the wheel, it's going to be, you know, I'm going to be making a fool out of myself getting in there. That makes it a lot easier. I love how this has luggage in it too, right? I mean, come on. You're not buying this car to be extremely practical, but I love that it can still fit luggage on this rear shelf. I don't imagine this would be my first choice for a road trip car, but at least the capability is there if you would like.
Picnic, it's like I'm getting in a race car.
Yeah, it's very race car-esque for sure. And to think that this was a 50s road car that you could buy, and it was this kind of super, right? It had this super exotic race car, you know, DNA and quality. That's very bizarre for the time, I'm sure.
Put the wheel back here.
Wow.
Let's close ourselves in here. Sitting inside this thing and hearing myself talk, it's ridiculous how sealed up this car is. None of these toggles or gauges or switches are labeled.
Whoa.
There's like 28 of them.
Oh my God.
All of the interior, although it's screwed in, it looks like aeroplane rivets. Even the little...
I did not notice that. Whoa. What is this car?
Pocket for your belongings looks like it belongs on an airplane. The first thing you see in the manual is the handbrake. Because it's a race car, it's out of the way, down low here on the left.
Wow.
So although there was
Very
no
cool.
air conditioning, there was a whole ton of venting options here. There's vents in the front that you open with a lever down here.
What?
That opens the air, pumping
Oh, I
in
see.
fresh air into this tightly sealed cockpit. And the way it was relieved was actually through these openings in the back here.
That's
If you
what
don't
that's
open this
for.
vent, you're getting zero fresh air in this cockpit. These cars are notoriously hot. Because of the curvature of the doors on these cars, you couldn't roll down the windows. It was either in or
You could not roll the windows down on these? What?
out. You could open them up, pop the windows out, and run with fresh air, but that's obviously not the fast aerodynamic setup. So you left the windows on and you opened your vent.
You
By
could
not
actually pop the
labeling
windows
any of
out?
these, they gave the
Was your only
interior
option?
such
That's
a
crazy.
clean look. Also, if you didn't know what all of these did,
So these are, yeah, very clean look as he mentioned, but they all have no labels at all. So you gotta, I mean, yeah, you gotta know what you're doing. Is this the ignition key right here? That's cool. It's always interesting seeing cars without the conventional key where you just put it in the steering column, right? Which is like the most common, right, on cars from anywhere. Of course, nowadays, it seems like every car comes with push button start now, which is usually somewhere around here on the dash. But yeah, seeing the key way over here in the center dash, that's definitely different. I'm sure it's happened on multiple cars, but not any car that I've driven, so that's very different.
didn't own one of these cars.
Damn.
So you've got your instrument panel lights, you've got your parking selector switch,
Wow.
you've got your light selector switch, obviously your key, turn the ignition on, your windshield wipers, then you've got your passenger split, then you've got your climate control for left side and right side of the car.
Look at that car. Let me move my mouse cursor. Wow.
Then you go here to your passenger horn,
What?
your cigar lighter, your
Wow.
windshield washer fluid. And then over here, you've got your right side leg ventilation and your right side windshield ventilation. On the driver's side, you've got your foot compartment ventilation and your left side windshield ventilation. Up here, you've got your reading light.
Oh,
There's a
wow.
lot of toggles and switches on this dash here. And if you haven't taken the time to learn it, it's a little bit of a daunting task. The plaid seats and the luggage just complete the look on this car.
Yeah, like I said, love the seats. That's something I never see, right, in any cars I've owned. That's very cool. Something I've only seen on German cars, which I find very interesting. You got to tell me if that's a thing, right? I've never seen an American car with plaid seats like that.
This car's got both the plaid seats and the leather seat cushions as an option.
Wow.
While I'm sitting here, we should probably fire this thing up. So we'll turn the key on, fuel pump on.
Oh, dude, I love old cars, man. And I love things. I just love any vehicle that's very mechanical, right? We all kind of complain, at least car guys do, complain about how numb modern day cars feel, right? How kind of not involved or disconnected you are from the car now. It's all electronic and computerized and automated, and you know the deal, right? Having a car that you have to turn the key, pull the fuel pump, push the clutch, fire it up, modulate the throttle, right? Get that carburetor mix just right. Oh, that is the best feeling in the world. Yeah, it's a lot of steps, all right? It's a lot more involved than hitting a brake and pushing a button and letting it do all the work, right? But that's not fun. This is fun. Oh. Oh my goodness. Oh, that sounds so good. It's got to be a 6-cylinder, right? Gotta be. Knowing that it's a German car, knowing that it's an older car as well, it's got to be, I would guess, an inline 6. There's no way this is a V6. That would be weird. Oh, and it's got one of the hoods open like that. Why not, right? It's very exotic. Look at that. That is,
Lots
even
of
the
plates
engine's a
there.
work of art.
The quality of the restoration on this whole car
Oh,
is spectacular. But you open up the hood and look in the engine bay, and that point is really hammered home. When you open up the hood on one of these things, it becomes apparent just how much of an angle these engines are on. The engine in these things, the M198, a 3-liter inline 6, putting out 215 horsepower.
3-liter inline 6. That is a great motor. That is a great configuration. Good size, not too big, right? Not too small. Inline 6 is arguably the best engine when it comes to just smoothness, balance, sound. You get good amount of power, good amount of torque. You can kind of make it do what you want, right? You can also get good mileage if you really want to do that. It's just a good motor, right?
And a top speed of 160 miles an hour.
Wow.
Making it the fastest production car of its time.
160 plus miles per hour in this? Whoa. Now, I thought this thing was spectacular. I didn't know it went that fast. I would have guessed like 120, 130. 160 in a 50s Mercedes?
Miles an hour, making it the fastest production car of its time.
Holy
These things came
smokes.
Fuel-injected with a Bosch fuel injector and a dry sump, making it the ultimate track car of the day.
Dang, I'm over here talking about carburetors. This thing was Bosch fuel injected? I really did not know about this car. Dang.
Because of the giant belly pans on this car, you can't get down on one knee and look under it and really see anything. So this is your only viewing window into what makes this car so fast and so ahead of its time. You look down,
So
you
ahead
can
of
see
its
the
time.
tubular chassis everywhere.
That's
You look on the
insane.
corners here. I mean, the thing looks like a modern race car. 4-wheel independent suspension, 4-wheel disc brakes. It's no wonder this thing just dominated on the racetrack.
Okay, I knew the car was beautiful. I did not know that this thing was a literal race car with a road car's beautiful skin over it. Tube chassis, racing, 4-link independent suspension, a beautiful, beautiful engine.
You look under the hood here, you start to see just a ridiculous
What the
number
heck?
of
I also want to go back to what he mentioned. This thing is, am I seeing this right? This is the valve cover, correct? So this engine, if this is straight up and down, if this is the engine block, right? Your 6 cylinders, even though I got 5 fingers, use your imagination here. So if this is straight, right? This engine is sitting like this. Is that right? It's not sitting straight up and down. It's sitting like this. Wow, this thing is just fascinating. Everything is calculated in this car, obviously. All right, so we're going to go to the webs now. Look at these couple videos I've looked at literally just this much of. They seem excellent. I'm going to finish these later on my own time. I will have them linked down there if you would like to see these whole videos. One of them was in English language. One of them was in German as well. Please do so with the links down there and check out those whole videos so you can learn more if you would like. I'm going to do some quick learning here as well, just for the video, so I can kind of learn on my own. So, yeah, obviously it's a Mercedes-Benz 300 SL. This thing was made from 54 to 57. They also had a Roadster that they made till 63. Now, I'm going to go off on a limb and say I think it's cool that they made a Roadster, but I've never been a Roadster guy, right? I would take the Coupe 1,000,000%. You can see the Coupe or the Coupe. I'm going to say Coupe. Coupe does sound weird. Chicken Coupe, like what the hell is Coupe, right? That's what I grew up saying. That's what we say here in the U.S. for some reason. I'm going to rework my brain and say Coupe. All right. So the Coupe, it just looks better, right? And you have the Gullwing doors. That's like number one is Gullwing doors. It's kind of one of the ultimate selling features of this car. Not to mention there's probably 100 other reasons you would want this. But come on, you got to admit the Gullwing doors is next level. You don't get that with this one. For some reason, that just doesn't hit the same. It does look beautiful, don't get me wrong, but this car I feel like is made to be a coupe, right? I feel like Roadsters just don't have that it factor. They don't have the racing pedigree, right? As a car guy, I feel like Roadsters are just not it. So I would go for the coupe here. This one also, and I would you call this just silver? I'm sure there's an actual name for it, but this kind of silvery color, I think is the best. It looks just like a speeding bullet. It looks gorgeous. But anyway, this was the W198 chassis code, a 2-seat sports car that was produced by Mercedes-Benz from 54 to 57 as a gull-winged coupe. So this actually traces its origins to a racing car. So my suspicions were correct. I mean, it's not that hard to kind of predict that this came from racing, right? I figured it had to have, right? It just looks too exotic to not come from racing. So here's what it actually came from. This is the W194, and this was racing all the way back in the early 50s. Wow, that is cool. You can clearly see the influence. Now, of course, this does look like a racing machine. It also doesn't look as beautiful as the 300 SL, so they definitely made a great job in transferring this to the road, keeping the racing DNA, but making it look absolutely gorgeous, right? This thing won a lot, by the way. You can see some accolades it was responsible for. Back to the 300 SL, maybe I can go to the screen so you can see a little more. It was equipped with a mechanical direct fuel injection system. I can't believe that. That's so cool. Of course, it had the 3-liter overhead cam, straight 6, very ahead of its time. The 300 SL was capable of reaching 263 kilometers per hour or 163 miles per hour. Absolutely bonkers for that time period as well. Fastest production car in the world at the time. Did I know it was a beautiful car? Yes. Did I know that it was the actual fastest car in the world at that time? No, I did not know that. I also didn't know that the designation SL is an abbreviation of the German term super light. I don't actually know how to say this German one. I apologize. But yeah, that in English would be super light, a reference to the car's racing bred lightweight construction. It was introduced to the American market, so I didn't know that. We did get these here in the U.S. I imagine they're ultimately rare, though. Super, super rare. I imagine these are probably rare in Europe as well. I don't think these are like on every street corner, right? Some cool old pictures. This debuted in the U.S. at the New York Auto Show in 1954. You can see it there. So I'm trying to picture being in 1954 and you see this car. I mean, that's got to blow you away. I mean, look at these cars. By the way, these are all really cool. I mean, 54, that's a great era. But then you look at this car, it actually looks out of place. And I mean it as a compliment. It looks way futuristic and way more elegant and beautiful and striking, right? It looks different than all these cars in the background. This is a 1953 prototype, and this was at Pebble Beach in 2012. Like, seeing this, I can't believe you could see some differences to the road car, or the final version, maybe I should say. But still, 53, and they had this kind of prototype. I mean, this thing is just wild. I also love how at the time you could get different color interiors. That was a thing on most cars. This is probably the most interesting picture here. To think that this is also something I did not know before today. That this car, this is what it looks like underneath. This is legit a race car. Like, I can't believe they actually sold, a race car that you could buy at it, for the street. How cool is that? That's like still an exotic thing nowadays, right? There are a few really excellent cars where you can arguably buy, basically a race car for the street. This is literally a race car. I mean, look at that, right? I didn't realize it was that serious, but it is. I love the wheels too, right? There's something about Steelies. I don't know if these would be called Steelies, but they remind me of like a Steely rim, right? They're not like a flashy looking wheel. I love these types of wheels. I just do. I think they look so cool. I think they look tough. I think they look great. I love them. Also, this is different, right? Like, where are the lug nuts? I don't really know how this wheel works. I'm assuming this is one of those, I think, like knockoff wheels. Is that what they call them? So don't you literally take basically a hammer or a mallet or something, and you got to like knock this loose and spin it off? That's my guess. I think that's really cool, right? A very just kind of fun quirk to the car. And, you know, just for curiosity's sake, you know, what are these going for? Well, as you probably are not surprised to hear, these go for millions. Millions of dollars, millions of euros, whatever currency you want to use here. These are going into millions. Let's get real. I can't really get a good number on how many of these are around. I'm seeing a lot of numbers like under 100. So if you want to, you know, weigh in on how many of these you think are like around or left or whatever in decent shape, let me know. These things are seriously rare, right? Let's look at some images as well and just kind of take in how beautiful this thing is. By the way, it looks good in every color. I do say that I like them in silver the best, which stands true. But look at this, like seeing this in this gorgeous blue color with the matching wheels as well. I mean, again, the thing is gorgeous, right? You cannot make it look bad. Look at the light blue. Again, I love how the wheels match. What a interesting touch that I didn't know that I liked, but here we are. I mean, the matching wheels, and this one has like center caps, you know, that big Mercedes logo. What a beautiful machine. Just gorgeous, right? That one looks awesome. I have to say, there is something extra special about this silver with the red interior. That just hits different. I mean, here we have a straight side profile shot. Looks absolutely incredible. Look at this thing in black, too. That is a mean looking car. Straight up mean looking. Wow, that's a whole different vibe, this thing in black. This car is seriously insane. Look at it in red. What? Okay, I wouldn't buy it in red, but I tell you what, and by the way, red is my favorite color. You know, you play the classic game, hey, what's your favorite color? My favorite color is red. It's always been red. I wouldn't take it in red. I'd take it in silver. But it looks damn good in red even. I almost just feel like it doesn't fit as well, right? I feel like it's too bright. I feel like this car is very classy, very sophisticated, and very exotic, and I feel like one of the, you know, colors like this suits it better, but that's just me. This is from 2022. This one sold for almost $7 million. I mean, hats off to whoever can afford to buy one of these. That is actually crazy. I always say that, first of all, you know, there's no way I could ever buy that. Second of all, I would almost be afraid to buy something that expensive. But, you know, props to whoever can. I mean, this is absolutely gorgeous. I would just be afraid of owning something that much, right? Like, how do you take care of something that expensive? Boy, this one's growing on me. This black on black one is just fire, man. Look, I'm going to wrap it up. I feel like I could go on for 2 hours looking at this thing, drooling over this thing, talking about this thing, learning about it, whatever, right? What a spectacular car. Like I said, in the past, I've heard of this car. I actually had forgotten it was called the 300 SL. I had just only known it as the Gullwing car, right? And, you know, I don't even know where I've necessarily seen it. I've just seen it somewhere, right? Pictures of it or something, right? Maybe it's been in a movie or two, I'm sure. Now getting to properly learn about it and see a little bit of, you know, how this thing works, some of the cool features of the interior and the engine and stuff, and of course seeing its extreme racing history and literally how this thing was born. It was born on the track, right? Very, very cool. This car is just rich in every single way, right? Rich history, looks gorgeous, and now you got to be filthy rich to buy one. But look, as a car guy, you just got to appreciate cars that have that it factor, right? That cars that really shaped the automotive timeline as we know it. This car has got to be in the conversation for most iconic cars of all time. I think if you ask anyone, and I would call this arguably in the top 3 most beautiful cars on earth ever made, right? Is that fair to say? I think it's definitely fair to say. This thing is just, I'm looking at it again, and it's just absolutely mind-blowing how this thing looks, and thinking that this was from the early 50s. It's just crazy to me. I absolutely love these episodes. I love cars, anything cars, and learning about a lot of these European cars, which, by the way, I've literally not even scratched the surface on. It is just so fun and, like, honestly therapeutic for me. I just find it so fascinating and very educational. Technically, we did miss out on this one. This was sold in the U.S., but of course it's an extremely rare car. So chances are most people in America, like me, have not seen this car in person. But hopefully someday I will. Hopefully someday you will as well. If you're a big fan of this vehicle, it is just such a cool car. And I'm glad to have learned about it. And I would love to learn about more from you guys. I always learn from you guys. So anything you would like to share about this car, please let me know. Germany just nailed it. They nailed it with us. So I hope you enjoyed. I appreciate you watching. Until next time, y'all. My name is Ian. You're watching IWrocker. And until next time, catch you later.